allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
All right, item 2 on the agenda is approval, deletions, and additions. Dr. Bracco.
Yeah, there are no additions to the agenda tonight, so please approve the agenda that you received in your packet last week.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Kelly, and we have a second by Mrs. Talent. Is there any discussion or any questions? All right, hearing none. We will need to do a roll call vote. Okay, Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent? Aye. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
And I will vote aye also. Thank you. And Ms. Kelly, are there any correspondences for us to hear?
There is not, Dr. Malco. Thank you.
Okay, liaison committee updates. Mr. Marshall, do you have anything to share about personnel interview?
I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, anything about the Cherville redevelopment?
I do not have anything for redevelopment or parks.
Redevelopment or parks, nothing. Lake Central Education Foundation, well, you're going to hear all about it in a little bit, so I won't say anything. Legislative is really, 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 really very important that we all of us, especially our community members, make it known to our legislators that we are not happy with what's going on with the funding recommendations that we think that we're going to get. As you know, the quality of a community is determined by the quality of the schools. And I don't know what they're trying to do, if they're trying to run all of our communities down by running all of our schools down. But trust me, from hearing from Dr. Bracco and Mr. James, if we don't get additional funding, it's going to be a pretty sad situation. So I'm kind of leading that as a community member. So if anybody is interested in joining us, we have so far expanded that email writing to include some community members in Crown Point, Hebron Public Schools, Tri-Creeks Public Schools, Hanover Public Schools, Lake Ridge Public Schools, and there's no reason why we can't get even bigger and broader, but it has to come from community, people that work, pay their taxes, and want a quality community and a quality school district. So please, join us in those efforts. It's very important. And for my Dyer Parks, they're taking bids right now on equipment for the playgrounds, so nothing else but that. Mrs. Seuss is absent, and Mrs. Talent.
Yes, I have nothing to report for the redevelopment committee because in Dyer, they will be meeting this week, and the wellness committee will be meeting next week. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And moving on to the official school board business topics, Dr. Bracco.
Thank you. Seek board approval for the minutes from our regular meeting on March 3rd, our special meeting on March 7th, and then seek board approval for the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures you received in your packets.
Move to approve.
Do we have a motion?
I'll second.
Move to approve.
All right, okay, Howard, we have your motion to approve, and now we have Nicole Kelly doing the second. Are there any questions or any concerns that you'd like to discuss before we vote? Hearing none. Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
And I will vote aye also. Thank you. Are there any there are no public comments. And official school board business topics, regular agenda. Dr. Bracco.
All right, I think we'll reverse the order on my thing and put our number 2 first so that our education foundation can pass out some well-deserved teacher grants. And so I think it's going to be Dawn and Sue and Melody coming forward. So please come forward and begin this process.
Okay. Well, recognize the board. First, we would like to thank the board for allowing us to come to present the checks and everything else. We also have some of our board members here. We have Mike and Zach Seljan and Adam Robertson are here from the board also. That's first. And second, Don is going to speak.
So I just first off want to talk a little bit about our Partners in Education. This is a new program we started this year that was designed to help garner community support in support of the Lake Central Education Foundation. And we have some of our partners in education here, and I'm just going to name off all of them, and if you are here, please just wave your hand if you don't mind. So we have our champion partners, which is at our top level, the Law Office of Brian Less and Strachan Van Til. Thank you so much for coming. Hero Partners, Indiana University Northwest School of Education, People's Bank, Powers Health, Puntillo and Crane Orthodontics, St. John Smoothie King, and the Zarnick family. And then we have our inspiration partners, MyBox Moving and Mobile Storage, Monica Conrad of Lewis Cappies, Schillings, Scott's U-Save Tires and Auto Repair, Stiefel, Minas, Sabau, Porterfield Group, Susan and Brian Popa, and the Seljan family. Thank you so much for coming on in support of the Lake Central Education Foundation and funding all the programs that we support. Thank you.
Okay, so this grant round, we gave away 14 grants for the total of $7,474.07. This will impact 2,338 students, which is like, woohoo, okay. So the first grant is Jennifer Miller from Watson, Pardon My Place Value for $718. 10-frame tiles are an advanced in base 10 manipulatives and will help students develop, connect, and understanding of a base 10 system as they build reason skills, problem-solving skills, and computation accuracy and fluency. All the frames can be used to convert fractions to decimals for enrichment. Okay. Yay. Oh. Okay. The next grant is Leah Kerber and Brian Kreischer. Okay. They're from Bibbage. Conscientious Discipline Baby Doll Circle Time for $257.01. The Conscientious Discipline Baby Doll Circle Time will allow us to help children develop healthy blueprints for self-regulation, relationships, sense of self, and development of robust, expressive, and receptive language skills.
That was their first grant.
That was their first grant, so. Okay. No, okay. Sherry Venturelli and Christy Bashara from Bibbage. Decodable readers for kindergarten and interventionist groups for $750. The decodable reader will help support early literacy development in kindergarten and intervention groups and will increase the students' phonetic and reading fluency. Okay. Next one is Tina Genovese. Okay. This is her first grant also, so yay. She's from Clark. Taylor Swift Era Reading Challenge for $531.70. The Taylor Swift Era Reading Challenge is an innovative and motivational program that ties the music to the relevant star to book titles, thus motivating students to read. Research shows that fostering a love of reading through engaging, interactive programs can improve literacy and inspire lifelong reading habits. Okay. Okay. The next one is Kayla Klein and Tracy Chandler, and Heather Davis can't be here tonight, so. They're from Clark, and they're doing Hal Clark Monarch Project for $720.07. The Hal Clark Monarch Project will enhance learning for all students involved due to its direct link to science of learning principles, nature-based instruction, and experimental learning, all of which shows positive outcomes for learners in research. The potential benefit of adding these elements into instruction including increasing the memory and concentration, higher standardized scores, improved mental health, increased academic engagement, practice of college and career readiness, as well as fostering environmental responsibility citizens for the future. So, yay. Okay, no. Okay. We have Miss Allison Castle from Clark Poetry in Motion for $726.13. The goal of this project is to provide students with an engaging, hands-on approach in poetry by creating a poetry makerspace in my classroom. This initiative will allow students to experiment with language and poetic expression using magnetic poetry kits, magnetic boards, and traditional ink and feather pens. By integrating tactile and interactive elements into the writing process, this project will foster creativity, self-expression, and a deeper appreciation for poetry. So, yay. Okay, and Miss Jennifer Frazier. Okay, from Beach, Miss Frazier's Phonics Fund for $691.54. Students will use phonetic games, books, tools, and activities to enhance their understanding of phonetic skills so they can become fluent readers and writers. So, and I do have to add, okay, she spelled phonetic fun, I think it's so cute, F-O-N-I-C-S-S-P-H-U-N, so she was having a pun on how to spell phonetic fun. So it's like, yay, Jennifer. So, okay, and that's all the people that are here tonight.
We did want to have a picture.
We want to
So we would like to have a picture with all the recipients and the board, and then we would like to invite our partners in education that are present to also and join us. So if you would like to, we'll get that first, and then please come and join us. Yes, I got it, right here.
Come on, our partners in education.
Come on.
Adam.
All right. Wait, and Alex, please
Here.
come on in. We'll do it now. We'll just have everyone together. We'll do pictures without, like, on our own in the hall. Okay. Teacher, right recipients, please, we're going to take more pictures in the hallway so that they can continue on with their business. Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. Okay.
No, thank you.
And if we all could wave hi to Howard, thanking him for his support too. Can you see us, Howard? Mr. Marshall, can you see us? Maybe not, huh?
All right, my second item is to give the board and audience and people at home an update on legislation and those items that are most concerning us. I would share that a week ago, we were able to meet with Representative Slager, who has our entire St. John Township, as well as Senator Durnall, then the following day, Saturday. And they both have indicated to us that school budgets are going to be under significant pressure this year. Not something we didn't know, but as you get it confirmed from the people who are down there talking it over, it just keeps bringing it back that we need to watch what we're doing, but we also need to be advocates for public education in Indiana. The first item I'll review quickly is House Bill 1001. This is every 2 years the budget bill. It starts on the House side, and then it works its way over to the Senate, and then it ends up in some kind of a conference committee to iron out the differences. The big piece of it is that the Choice Scholarship expansion this year, the new money of $180 million this year, 139 million of it is going to make vouchers universal, meaning there's no longer any salary cap for people to receive a private school or a homeschool voucher. The previous cap was 230,000, which was already pretty high, but while it was covering between 96 and 97% of the children attending a private school, now it will be 100%. In this particular year, when money is short, though, to give 139 million of 180 million in the first year to a small sliver of students benefiting is a concern. In year two, it does drop to 52 million, and all public ed gets the other 128. So in the first year for public schools, it's a 0.5% increase, and in the second year, it's 1.5% increase, according to current estimates. The other piece that concerns us is the 160 million that was in a separate line item for curricular materials, which, as we've said here many times before, is not really enough for Lake Central to cover all their curricular materials, is now rolled into the formula, so it shows a higher percentage increase when that was money we were already getting just in a separate column. And then the other piece I would share is, while other expenses like Medicaid, are going up, and we understand that the state has to prioritize that, we just can't forget about inflation and the impact it's having on not just on the stuff we're buying, but on all of our staff members as they're trying to pay their bills with higher prices. I will say that I shared with our elected officials both that I don't necessarily blame them for the inflation. From my prior economics teaching background, I think it's overspending at the federal government level that resulted in most of it. But we still have to acknowledge it. It still exists. It's still impacting the stuff we buy, and it's still impacting the stuff our staff members purchase. The second piece tonight is Senate Bill 1. This is the property tax relief that is probably getting the most debate of anything down at the State House this year. While all of us, I've said it before, are paying more for school buses, cleaning products, paper, everything else that's essential to educating students, the idea of our operations fund being frozen is troubling. We also are facing a 17.2% NIPSCO increase over a 2-year period beginning in November of this year. And this will result in us having to transfer greater sums of money from our education fund, money that we typically spend in classroom activities, to pay these other bills. We're a district that pays our bills. We pay NIPSCO on time, we pay our other bills when they come in. So it's not really an option. When you get a bill, you have to pay it, and if you don't have it in operations, you will go to your other fund to get it. So what do I want to remind, the decision makers? And as Dr. Malco mentioned earlier, anybody who, feels strongly about this issue, feels strongly that public schools are a cornerstone of a good, strong community, maybe there's a way for us to provide this property tax relief over a longer period of time. Instead of freezing us in the first year in 2026 on our operations income, knowing we have NIPSCO facing us, knowing we have those other increased costs, might we be able to get 2 or 3%? In the past, it's been 4% capped, and that came close to covering us with the bad inflation over the last couple of years. Zero won't come close at all. And then also, when it comes to tuition support, would there be a way for us to get the true 2% to all students and have that funding for those other voucher students of that high-income group delayed and or paid from some other source? The $160 million for curricular materials, we believe it should remain a separate item in the budget so that we continue to get it, because if it gets rolled into the other part, we really are getting next to nothing in our tuition support. And then, while schools can reduce overhead, I just want to remind everybody that we're a people business, and so most of our expense is in people. It's in teachers, it's in support staff, it's in the people who help teachers, it's in people who clean the buildings. And for us to cut the budget, we have to cut people, and when we cut people, it cuts services. It's one thing to cut custodians, you can do a little bit, but you still have to keep the building clean. Nobody wants to have an unclean facility, and we've taken a lot of pride in keeping our facilities clean. There may be some things that you can cut here and there, but if you look outside of the classroom activities, what is it? Is it safety? Is it counseling? I mean, is it every choice is not a good one, right? It's putting things on a list and saying, boy, we really value that. And so I share this because it's just important that we not accept this notion that somehow in schools we can do more with less. We can't do more with less. We will do less with less, and we will adjust, and we'll pay our bills, and we won't deficit spend. But I just want everybody to be aware of what we're facing, because if we do get squeezed here in this at the end of the session, we'll have to make some hard choices, and everyone just needs to be braced for what that means. So I'll stop there for this evening and field any questions if there are any.
Does anyone have any questions? So I want to make sure I understand this, Dr. Veracco. There's $180 million allocated for education. $139 million of that is going to vouchers, which leaves us with $41 million for public ed.
That's the most recent estimate that I've seen from Legislative Services Agency.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Malco, I just had one question too. So when you're saying community-wide, if we are planning to look at how we can make a difference as community or individual members, we can contact you, and you have started an email thread or information, and we can learn more about how to write to various committees, like if necessary, Ways and Means, our own local legislators, as well as others in Indianapolis, right?
Right. What I have been doing, or did for the last email writing campaign, is put together a short script and then also provided the addresses and names of the Ways and Means Committee so we could get that message to them. I know there's a lot of interest out there. I've had several people reach out to me and say, hey, I am ready. This is not good. I'm not happy. So the more we talk about it, the more it's out there, because I bet you most people don't realize that there's that much money going to vouchers. They don't know it. So we need to get the message out.
May I add one more thing? One of the opportunities that we have to learn about is how our funding is affecting our towns and municipalities. Even though there have been some changes with that, our legislators are looking at trying to bring some of those funds that are given to our municipalities to a lower level. That also affects our students, and that's where they live. So I think that that is a concern, and appreciate the community cooperation that we have with Dyer, Schererville, and St. John in attending their meetings. Thank you.
And I want to add one thing, because you just triggered my memory from a recent conversation I had with Representative Slager. You know, one of the things they're pitching down there is, well, some communities can increase their local option income tax And in the places where they might be taxing 0.5%, they may be able to go up. But in Lake County, we're already at 1.5%. So if we go up, you know, if we double that, then the local tax would be higher than the state income tax. So for some of us, you know, it's trickier to do. And then the final piece of that, which Rob, Mr. James and I were talking about earlier, is, and on the local option income tax, the schools don't get any of that local option income tax. So it would do nothing for us. It could help the towns and cities, but it couldn't help us, or county government too as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. And next on our agenda is Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I am seeking the board's approval for the personnel recommendations.
Motion to approve?
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the personnel recommendations. To approve the personnel recommendations. Any discussions or questions from anyone? All right, hearing none. Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
And I will vote aye also. Thank you.
And then for my second item, I am seeking the board's approval for the Lake Central calendar for school year 26-27.
Okay, does that need a motion? Yes, it does.
So moved.
And I'll second that. Any questions or discussion about this item? Mrs. Castaneda, did you work with, how did the process come together of the calendar?
It's the same process we normally use. We start with a couple different drafts and then bring them to LCTA and ask them to take it back to their leadership team to let us know which breaks where we have some choice they would prefer.
Okay, so we had input from
The teachers.
other people besides your administrative team, okay.
Yes.
Did that include community members?
No, we have not had that
Okay.
in the process before.
Okay, any other questions for Mrs. Castaneda? Mr. Marshall, what's your vote for this?
I didn't hear your question.
Are you voting in favor of the school calendar? Aye, okay. Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now to Dr. Bracy.
Good evening. For my first item, I am just seeking your approval for the professional leave request in your packets.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve, and I'll second that. Okay. Any questions, concerns? All right, hearing none. Mr. Marshall, what's your vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I will vote aye also.
Thank you. For my second item, I am just seeking your approval for the field trip request in your packets.
So moved.
And I'll second?
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second on the field trip request from Dr. Bracy. Mr. Marshall, what will be your vote?
Aye.
Okay, Mrs. Talent,
Aye.
Ms. Kelly,
Aye.
and I will vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Schoeneman, Director of Secondary Education, is next.
Thank you. For my first item, I'm seeking the board's approval for the professional leave requests included in your board packet.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second for the professional leave requests from Mrs. Schoeneman. Are there any questions, any discussions about it? So, girls on the move.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Okay, and I shared with you on email as well. Girls on the Move is a new club established by Laura Bloom Johnson and Courtney Blackwell at Kaler Middle School. The intent of it is to move forward, and so they incorporate physical movement as well as a safe space to empower young women, and they talk about topics such as self-confidence, social emotional support, movement, and then my next request is going to be the field trip requests, and so that's a piece of that as well.
Okay.
They've got quite a big turnout this year as well for their first year.
Okay, very good. All right, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Marshall, your vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And myself will be an aye.
Thank you. For my second item, I am seeking the board's approval for the field trip request, also included in your packet.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Marshall. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Any questions or discussions about the proposed field trip requests? I see the Olympiad team, Science Olympiad team is going to Madison, Wisconsin. We have the robotics team going to Indy. And we have the Girls on the Move. So we've got some new, neat things happening here. So let's call for a vote. Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mrs. Kelly?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. Thank you. And next is Mrs. Gramala, Director of Student Services.
Thank you. For my item tonight, I just wanted to update the board on a training that we held last week for our paraprofessionals. So as a reminder, we received a grant this year from the Indiana Department of Ed to provide training to our paraprofessionals. And so we held a voluntary training on the March 11th early release day. We had 51 of our paraprofessionals choose to participate in a 90-minute live virtual training. The training was provided by Dr. Gail Ringwalt from the Indiana IEP Technical Assistance Center. She presented on a variety of topics. So she hit some basics, like the different roles that paraprofessionals can provide, different parts of the IEP, the importance of confidentiality, which is one we like to stress anytime we talk with our paras, and then got into some more in-depth topics, the difference between can't do and won't do, and how to approach those challenges with students. She talked through scaffolding and prompting and how paras can work with that. Accommodations versus modifications, which is something that is always a struggle for paras, and then how to increase engagement and different techniques for increasing engagement with students. So at the end of the training, all of the paras who attended were given access to a site. They use something called a Padlet, which is a type of website that has just a wealth of links that the paras then have access to for a lot of different resources. So they will all have access to that, and the IEPTA Center continues to update that as more information becomes available. They were also given Dr. Ringwald's email address, and she told them if they had any questions to reach out to her. So we got some really nice feedback from the paras who participated, and actually one emailed me today and asked when we'd be hosting another training. So, so our grant was a total of $20,000. I'm working with Mr. James to see what we have left and what I have Mrs. Alessandri, our math coach, is putting together a training for our next early release day for the paraprofessionals, and then so we'll have something going in April and then again in May, and we'll see where we're at, and hopefully we can exhaust the rest of our funds before the end of the school year. So, thank you.
Any questions or comment? It really is an awesome opportunity. You know, the parapros come in and there can be such a quick turnover, and I think this might slow down that turnover because they have better knowledge, better understanding, they feel a part of a program.
Yeah, it might take more than this, but
It's a good beginning, right?
It's nice to be able to get them some additional support, and we appreciate those who are giving up some of their time to participate.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. And next we have Director of Business Services, Mr. James.
Thank you. My first item is to seek your approval for the donations that were listed in your school board packet.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions?
Does anybody have any details on this book vending machine? I'm intrigued.
So I've seen a picture of it. I think it's it looks like a traditional vending machine, but
Okay.
it's literally stacked with books instead. And then I don't think people pay. It's just more you're selecting, and then the
Okay.
book comes out, and I'm sure there's a return sequence piece with it. But,
Mrs. Claybaugh from Coling is here.
Oh.
well, if you,
A little bit more detail on that. So our PTO is making a generous donation for this book vending machine. They were looking for a way to give back to every student in our building. So what better way to give back than with books? So every student, to help celebrate their birthday, will get a coin. They use that coin to pick a book from that vending machine, and they get to pick it and take it home with them. So we're very excited to bring that to Coling and very appreciative for our PTO.
That is awesome.
That is. It's
Love it.
very nice, very nice. Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and do our vote. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Mrs. Kelly?
Aye.
And I will be aye also. Thank you.
thank you. My second item is to seek your approval for our semi-annual application to the state's Common School Loan Program. Just as a reminder to the board, this is a program set up by the state. It's a technology loan where we use that loan money to replace the smart boards, Chromebooks, iPads, other technology devices in our classrooms that are utilized by students. The most amount that we could apply for this time is approximately $867,800, slightly less than in other years because it's based on your ADM count. And just, it's paid back over 5 years at 1% interest. And since we do these every 6 months, when one's coming on, another one's coming off, so really it's tax neutral to us in our community. So it's a great funding source in order to keep up with technology. So I seek your board's approval to submit that application to the state for the Common School Loan.
Okay, and I will move for approval of that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, are there any questions, concerns you have for Mr. James? My only comment, and I make it every year, and you probably know what I'm going to say, when we buy new equipment, let's just make sure that we have the staff to work with the teachers and
Yeah, usually we're replacing one smart board with another smart board, or we're replacing Chromebooks. So yeah, we make sure that's why we have the techs in the building to make sure that the staff is properly trained on those devices.
thank you. All right, Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Mrs. Kelly?
Aye.
And I will be aye also.
Thank you.
Sure. Are there any no public comments? All right, board comments and consideration of future agenda items. Ms. Kelly?
No comments this evening.
Okay. Mrs. Talent?
I just want to say thank you to all the teachers that put forth their extra effort. And it's a lot of work for what you're doing. So thank you. And principals and our administration.
And Mr. Marshall?
I will pass this evening, thank you.
Okay. And I would say it was a pretty awesome weekend because we had the open house at Bibbage, and that's a special, special place in my heart. So it was nice to be there and see individuals I haven't seen in many, many years. And Dr. Bracco, if we have to take things away, it wouldn't be things like sports or theater or music, would it?
Well, That would bring out some emotion, but I would say that if we have some activities that very few students are participating in, that could end up on the list. So there is a possibility.
Okay. And I know some districts are doing away with transportation.
And as I mentioned, I don't know if I've said it in this forum, but I said it to our legislators. It would be one of the last things I think we should do, because all of our schools, where they're located on rather narrow thoroughfares or on 41 here at the high school, we already have a lot of stagnation at arrival and dismissal. And if you take that 20 minutes on each end and you make everybody drive instead of having the 70% of the kids that ride the bus, we'd probably triple that time. Our towns would come to a standstill. So I just don't think that's an option at all for us.
Okay. Good, that's good to hear. Board of Calendar Events.
So our next meeting is here on Monday, April 7th.
Oh, my gosh.
I also want to remind the board that we have an ISBA regional dinner at Chateau in Maryville on May the 6th. You've received an email on that. If you could let Mrs. Nowacki know if you plan to attend that. The spring one generally is more informative than the fall, because the executive director, Dr. Spradlin, and in-house counsel Lisa Tanzel will be talking about the recently passed bills and what it looks like they mean for us. I mean, it's still just a week after the end of the session, so they may not have all the information, but they'll have the big stuff. So encourage everyone to attend that evening.
Dr. Baracco, I had a question. When does that session end again? The session, when does the budget finally?
Oh,
What's
the
the
current
date?
session ends at the end of April.
The end of April? Okay, so we have that long to get our comments in, okay.
Well, what we're trying to do is do a flood every week. Yeah, so, but it's real easy to just say, oh, I'll do it, and then, time slips away and we don't get it done. And that's why we're going to try to send something out every Tuesday. Hopefully that'll keep people on track to get that done. But I know that's a problem. So, any other comments?
I have one more. I was just wondering, how about CTE funds? Has anybody heard any more about that? I know it came up in some of our communication that came from Indy, but...
We're getting mixed signals on that. So the
Okay.
original budget out of the House called for a 9% increase to CTE allotment for CTE courses. And then last week, as I sent the board an email, there was a rumor that may be zero. So I don't know at this point where that stands. This thing is so fluid. They're going to keep talking about it. So the main message is, if we're going to get meager increases in our tuition support, please don't cut our operations and then mess us up. We need things to be gradual so that we can plan and prepare and properly manage the way we conduct business for kids.
I did notice that there was something in the paper about Crown Point and the referendum and the presentation that the business manager was doing, I believe. Did you see that in the paper?
I didn't.
Yeah. He was very exact about saying that even though the verbiage says that this is an increase or it implies it, this is not an increase. So that obviously has not gone away, has not changed.
No, there is some language in Senate Bill 1 to correct that language, or at least change it, modify it to some extent. What I've been asking for is two questions. One, if you're a new referendum. One, if you're a renewal. If you're a renewal going for the same amount or less than what you asked for the time before, that question should not use the word increase, because that is not an increase.
Right.
That's a completely misleading and inaccurate question. So hopefully we get some relief on that question, because after all, we're just a year away ourselves.
Right. Okay, and we thank you, educators and and visitors for joining us tonight with our Education Foundation, where we're taking education to new heights. That's their quote. So have a good evening, and anybody call for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.